I'm Jim Frazer, Vice President of Smart Cities and Infrastructure here at ARC Advisory Group. And today we're broadcasting from the ARC Annual Forum here in Orlando, Florida. Today I'm very happy to be joined by Benson Hougland of Opto 22 on the subject of MQTT applications. So Benson, welcome to today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Benson, recently we had a podcast with Arlen Nipper of Cirrus Link Solutions, who really introduced a very strong foundation about MQTT, some of its applications. He talked about how it's a standardized protocol and how it's in broad use in a tremendous range of devices, including Alexa and Facebook, for example. But let me just ask you, what are real customers doing? What impactful applications do you have you worked on?
So that's a great question, and again, thanks for having me here. Yeah, Arlen and I go way back. We've been working on applications, trying to help solve customer problems for 2 decades now. And I've always been a really big fan of the MQTT protocol because of some of the problems it solves that many of our customers encounter every day. And let me frame it up by addressing it in this way. Let's give you an example. We have one customer. They build desalination equipment. And one of their big challenges is when they deploy a desal unit to, say, a hotel or a commercial facility of some sort, it basically drops in at that site and they have no access to any of the information from that unit. So it's very difficult to, say, create a service model or to alert their customers should there be an impending failure. And it comes down to, communications. For example, this maker of desal equipment is an OEM. They embed, our products on their unit to perform its functions. And what we've been able to do now with MQTT is, and let me back up a moment. The MQTT protocol uses what probably Arlen described as a publish-subscribe model. And why that's important. If I have a machine in the field, this desal unit, and I want to talk to that machine to find out what's going on, I've got to get IT involved. I might have to put together a VPN or get some sort of appliance. It's complicated. It's very difficult to do. It's hard to get IT buy-off for allowing external access into a facility or a plant or a remote site. But what MQTT does, if I can say it right, it flips that on it flips it around. And by that I mean it's kind of like it can send a message outbound. In other words, I don't have to open up any ports to the device, to the network, to the machine. I can actually initiate communications from the machine with data about what it's doing. And that's a very different model than what we're used to in traditional industrial automation and SCADA networks, where you have to go ask a machine or ask a controller or an I/O system for its information before it responds. MQTT flips it around, as I said, and when it publishes data outbound. And when it does so, it publishes this data into, I'm sure Arlen used the term as well, infrastructure, meaning it publishes it into a broker, allowing anybody who needs that information and has the secure access to it to get it. And that's the beauty of MQTT. It's data that you need, where you need it, and when you need it. And it's all published in infrastructure. So that's the OEM example. Now with MQTT, they can take all of their operating information from their desal equipment, publish that data into the cloud, and then back at corporate, they subscribe to that data, and now they can provide a level of service to their customers they could have never done before at much lower cost.
I understand. Years ago we had SNMP that was a fairly, the end device was just there to be get or set.
And the perfect example of that, and I'm thrilled that you know it, know SNMP. SNMP uses something called a trap. And the beauty of an SNMP trap is it literally sends out a trap to a unicentered distributed network system for basically being able to determine whether a printer was out of paper or a computer hard drive was getting too full. The point being is that it could publish that information as well. And SNMP is a protocol we've had in our products for 20 years, and one of our largest scale rollouts actually uses that. MQTT is very similar in that regard, but it allows for more of a a model where that anybody can subscribe to this data over a standard protocol without necessarily having a network management system in place to facilitate the SNMP messages.
That I understand very well. And for many of our listeners come from the transportation domain, and you may or may not be aware that the Intelligent Transportation System Network of North America and many other places is entirely dependent on SNMP. And as a result, there's an awful lot of querying of those terminal devices that don't do much unless they are queried and reconfigured remotely.
It's true. And our largest rollout of our Ethernet IO product, which does have SNMP, is about 10,000 units on cell towers all over the United States. And it does indeed work on SNMP.
So you talked about the desalination. I'm guessing that's a reverse osmosis system on a tractor trailer that rolls up or
yeah,
larger.
It's actually about the size of, I know your audience can't see this table, but it's standard size table. Yeah. Okay. It's about that size. Yeah.
So what other applications come to mind?
So we have another application where we're working with a company that makes plastic cups. That's about the best I can reveal. And in their case, they have a lot of dispersed assets. Some of it's manufacturing, some of it's a tank farm, other is a warehouse. And what they were trying to achieve is to somehow consolidate all this data back to their business systems running at their headquarters. Now, in this particular case, they even had a couple of facilities that were across the border. So we're talking like Mexico and Canada, in places where they didn't necessarily have a lot of IT involvement. In other words, they didn't have an on-site IT department or anything. So they went about trying to, collect all this data from all of their operating assets, and they ran into a number of challenges, a lot of them IT related. They were hiring companies like Cisco and AT&T and others to try to build out metropolitan area networks. They were trying to, VPN tunnels and so on. And it really became a big headache and it's very difficult to maintain. They have since switched over to an MQTT infrastructure where at these remote sites, they're collecting all the data from maybe existing PLCs or perhaps some IO units, and they're publishing all of that data back into their infrastructure back at headquarters. So now headquarters isn't having to go build out, specific networks to try to connect to those assets. They can use standard public, it could be cellular, it could be, whatever public infrastructure is available, because MQTT supports publishing this data over very secure channels using TLS encryption and so on over any IP capable network. Now, think about that location in Mexico with no IT staff, but just a few data points that were important to the business. They were able to drop in a device, collect that data, publish it out to the infrastructure over just any IP available network, and start pulling that data into their business systems.
That's a great application. It's just fascinating. Do any others come to mind?
Well, probably the more obvious ones are the work we're doing today with water, wastewater, and oil and gas. Anytime you have remotely and geographically dispersed assets, a well site or a pump station, that's really, it's so easy to see the value in being able to have those assets publish their data on change. And that's where we've had probably the largest success is those types of traditional SCADA applications, you could say. And let's not forget, you mentioned Amazon Alexa and Facebook's use of MQTT. Well, that was great, but guess what? It was actually invented to solve a SCADA problem, and that's what Arlen did back in the late 90s. And so it's interesting to see that how people know MQTT and how it's being used today is going back to the reason it was invented in the first place, solving a SCADA problem.
That's amazing. So here we are at the ARC annual forum. Can you comment on the value of the ARC forum to you and any news that you may have generated this week?
Yeah, you bet. I love coming to the IRC Forum every, the first week of February every year, and we've been here every year. It's just the networking here is extraordinary. The buzz, it's palpable. There's just, everybody's so excited about new technologies, how to get them applied. It's also really good for me in the sense that, anybody who's anybody in the press is here. So it gives me really a terrific way of sharing our story with a lot of, whether they're customers, integrators, the press, and so on. It's just kind of a melting pot of influence and people who are driving this industry. And it's a reason why, generally speaking, and over the past several years, anytime we have a major product introduction, we do it here at ARC. And indeed, today we are announcing our new Groove Rio remote I/O platform. And interestingly enough, as a vendor, we've actually baked in MQTT directly into this very configurable I/O system. So the notion of grabbing a sensor data or a temperature or a flow and getting it into a database, an IoT platform, into the ignition system is now minutes instead of hours or weeks, and dealing with PLCs and PCs and so on. So we're pretty excited about Groove Rio, and we're excited. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Benson, thank you very much. You've been a great guest. Do you have any last words?
No, just keep doing what you guys are doing, and we appreciate your support, and we're certainly very, very interested in letting more of the world know the advantages and value of protocols like MQTT and what all of us are trying to do to help solve these customer problems.
Well, Benson, again, thank you very much for being our guest today. Again, this is Jim Frazer, Vice President of Smart Cities here at ARC Advisory Group, broadcasting from the annual ARC Annual Forum in Orlando, Florida. Thank you to everyone who's listening out there, and be here talking to you soon.